trans. In the studio with me today, I have Father Tom Hartman. He is the pastor at St. Michael Parish here in Sioux Falls, the largest parish in the diocese. Although I think it goes back and forth with Holy Spirit a little bit, doesn't it?
I do hear that.
There's like this argument about this. I'm a Holy Spirit parishioner, and there's this, we're bigger. No, we're bigger. No, we're... Maybe it changes daily.
I think I heard it on a program with Deacon Pat.
That would never
Darrington,
have happened.
Right?
Just
so
recently.
I've heard it recently. Yes.
Well, you know, St. Michael has been a large parish for a long time. So you have a lot of responsibility over there and a lot of people counting on you, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
But again, it's part of the call. It's part of the adventure too.
Yeah.
Right?
How long have you been at that parish?
Just since July 1st is since I've been the pastor.
Right.
But I did happen to be the associate there for 2 years.
I didn't know that. So that was towards the beginning of your priesthood.
That was the first 2 years.
Oh, that's awesome. So were there people that were still there?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it actually
hasn't been that long, huh?
No, it actually helped make the decision process and praying through it much easier.
Yeah.
Right? To go back to say, yeah, I can see myself at St. Michael's. I was there.
Right.
Right.
I like that parish. I can do that.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So Father Hartman is here to tell us about how he got his call to the priesthood. He has a story that most priests don't have, especially pre-priesthood. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Should be a good story. So, Father Hartman, will you just tell us a little bit about where you grew up, that kind of stuff early on?
Yeah. So I grew up in Millbank, South Dakota, and I grew up in a family of there's 12 of us kids.
Oh, my goodness.
And so anyway, 6 boys, 6 girls, and my dad ran the family grocery store. And
in Millbank.
In Millbank.
Okay.
So as he ran that through the years, you just grew up in a family business. And
I was going to say, you guys did a lot of stocking shelves,
right,
didn't you?
and facing shelves and cleaning, whatever it took, shoveling sidewalks. But in the end, I continued to work there up until I was 41 before I entered seminary.
Okay.
So
Did you kind of take it over for him then?
So my dad passed away in 1995, and myself and 2 other brothers took over that particular store. We had another one in the neighboring town of Ortonville.
Okay.
So there are 2 of those stores.
Are those still in the family then?
We have the one in Ortonville, the one in Millbank. We just sold about a month and a half ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
what's it called? I'll have to check that out sometime.
That one was called Hartman's Family Foods.
Okay.
But originally it was Bill's Super Value. My dad was Bill.
Oh, okay. Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you had a big family growing up.
Yeah, big family, big Catholic family. Definitely a family where vocations were encouraged. Your mom and dad would have loved to. Of course, they would have loved to know that they have a priest in the family.
Yep.
And so
they probably know.
It just took a little while. Mom is still around, right?
Good.
So
Good.
of course she's my biggest fan, right?
Sure.
So she knows how to reply on Facebook. So
she sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I kind of mentioned there a little bit, for those who don't know you, how long have you been a priest?
I'm going into my 5th year, but this is 4 full years. So.
Okay, so you haven't been a priest very long. You have a whole nother life you lived before priesthood.
Right.
So can you tell us about what you did before that?
Yeah. So I was in the family grocery business. I went immediately from from high school into the family grocery business, worked until I was 41. But in that meantime, I was married at a young age. I was married just out of high school.
Wow.
Right. And so in some ways, you could just say probably young and foolish, just really not really knowing what I was doing or what we were doing and getting into.
Yeah, you didn't just do that all by yourself. That's for sure.
So in that course of that time, as I was married young, but I was also divorced young, and I had 2 kids. Okay. So I'm a priest who has sitting before you with 2 kids. My son Isaiah is 30. He's a firefighter for Denver South Metro.
Oh, wow.
And then my daughter is an English teacher in Millbank. Both are married. Natasha married Christian Carl's, a farmer from Millbank. And I have 2 grandsons,
Very nice.
Grant and Gavin. And on Isaiah's side, who married Megan, we have one on the way and due at the end of April. So it should be 3 boys under the age of 2. So it's a lot of fun.
So as if priests aren't busy enough.
Yeah.
You have the fun of grandchildren too, which probably is a welcome relief sometimes to be able to, not that priesthood is terrible, but you get to kind of experience what your parishioners are experiencing, unlike what many priests are able to do.
Yeah, no, that's true. I
Yeah.
think in some ways I'm kind of like a hybrid of some sort, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it is, it's beautiful that you have this kind of this built-in family that's there that you go back to. Just like any grandpa, you spoil those grandkids while you're with them, right?
Right.
And so, anyways, it's a great joy. And yet at the same time, it is trying to figure out how to balance in the midst of these two calls,
for sure.
And so there it comes with its challenges, but at the same time, the joys outweigh the challenges that come with it.
Absolutely. Do you think that experience of being married, having children, does that help you in things like marriage prep and any kind of counseling you might do with your parishioners?
Yeah, I think couple areas that I do see it. Marriage prep for me is actually a real joy. This divorced priest still considers marriage a real joy, right? But I think there's part of that after that I had gone through the divorce that I had to ask God a question, and it was, God, what is love? And He continued to unfold to me not only the beauty of the way marriage should look, but He also started to reveal to me, but my heart was a little different. I had this priestly heart, and that this was where He was calling me to serve in that capacity.
Sure.
So anyway, so it just but in that discovery of love, it healed me, to be able to speak beautifully still about the sacrament of marriage, despite the pains. But also being able to look at it from the perspective that, okay, I didn't do things right, and let me just show you what I've discovered, and hope you can discover it the same way.
Yeah, that's got to be really helpful for people you work with. So.
Yeah, and then it also helps for those out there that have gone through divorce and maybe haven't taken that step of the annulment process.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? So they know that I've had to walk through that annulment process. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right, because you can't be a priest, I suppose, if you don't have that annulled.
Without the annulment.
Right.
So, but what I found even for myself is in a couple of those discoveries. One is in some of the help that I received just through Catholic Family Services programming, the divorced widow separated, and then also just the healing that I received from going through the annulment process. It was beautiful because in some cases in the back of the church, just before my diaconate ordination, I stood back there. I was scared. I was all those emotions. But I said to myself, oh, this is what it is to be free, to really enter into this moment. And I knew when I was walking up there that I was saying yes to God freely.
Yeah.
And so it was actually, in some ways, even though it was a crazy moment, it still was beautiful in the fact that, yes, God, I'm coming forward. I'm doing this of my own free will.
Right. Very different feeling of walking down the aisle than it was when you got married.
Then I got married.
Yeah. That's really cool. Okay, so now we got that part. So now I want to understand how you got a call to the priesthood when you're after all of that, and when did this start?
So, well, actually, the call to the priesthood actually happened probably back when I was just a little kid.
Okay.
So I was.
You have a memory of something.
I was just doing. Had an interview about a week ago that they asked this question, and I said, I can think back to when that I was a third grader, and the priest's name was Father Hugh, and when he would come into the classroom at St. Lawrence in Millbank, he would come in and he looked like the Fonz, right? He was cool. And then he'd come in with a sucker in his mouth, and he'd kind of torment.
Better than a cigarette.
He'd kind of torment us a little bit, and he knew how to have fun with us. And at the same time, there's something of him that inspired that I could even tell myself that I would have thought about being a priest as far back as then. This desire continued, but as the journey goes, I actually was in seminary when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And anyways, I don't want to get into too much detail, but in that year, I just there was some persecution. There just wasn't what I expected. And I left the seminary really bitter.
Oh, wow.
And so in that time, though, that I had to wrestle with this, in some ways I'm like, God, if this is what's gonna happen, I'm not sure if I want anything more to do with you, kind of thing, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't say I completely walked away, but I just ended up leaving there with just an anger and
Right.
bitterness in my heart. And,
Right. That's really sad.
So sad, and yet at the same time, in the end, it was all part of God forming me for the moment, you know, that there was part of me that had to work through forgiveness in my life. And when I was able to work through forgiveness of this hurt that I received, God let me know it was a gift that I knew that I wouldn't hate again. Right. And so when he brought me through that, I think it was preparing me, you know, all this time for what was taking place. And so anyway, so after I came back from seminary, you know, this is actually where I met my future wife at high school and ended up getting in a teenage relationship that wasn't healthy. And so that was when, after I left my senior year, Becky was a senior in high school and she was pregnant. And so anyway, so at that point, there was having to face the reality of talking to my parents, having to face the reality of where I'm at. And it was like God spoke to me and he says, "Are you doing that well without me?" And
You probably didn't have a good answer for that, did you?
Well, the only good answer is said no. You know, and so it was just kind of one of those eye openers. And through the grace of our parish priest, you know, I went to him first. And it happened to be that when I went to him, he asked if I'd drive him to Fargo and back. And anyways, on the way back from Fargo, I thought this is the perfect opportunity. And so as we're coming down I-29 from Fargo, I got to about Sisseton, and I was driving him, and I'm spilling my guts, and I'm crying while I'm driving, and we could have used windshield wipers on my eyes at that time, right? And he says, "Tom, pull over, you know." And I'm thinking we're pulling over because he was going to drive, and he had just got done taking some cancer treatments.
You're like, nope.
But he pulled over, and he reached in his glove box, and he pulled out a stole, and he put it around himself, and he said, "That is the most beautiful confession I've heard." And he absolved me of my sins on I-29.
That does not happen very often, I suspect.
No. So anyways, but it was such a powerful moment. There was a realization in that moment that I knew that it was better to suffer with God than to suffer without him, you know. And so it was just like from that moment forward, I knew whatever was going to happen, I was back. And wherever this led, God, I'll follow. You just have to continue to unfold it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to say just as we're starting Lent. It's better to suffer with God than without him.
Yeah.
What a great thing.
And sometimes I think, you know, to suffer without him is just plain misery.
Right, yes. It's really true suffering that has no purpose. Almost.
But in the end, to suffer with him, you know, there can be that purpose, right? There can be that value in it. And and it's easier.
Yes, it is.
It's just easier.
It is.
So, yeah.
Well, if you just joined us, we're talking to Father Tom Hartman about his call to the priesthood. So after that time, that confession on I-29, when was that? Like, was that closer to when you decided to become a priest?
So no, this was actually at this point, literally at the time that just out of high school when Becky became pregnant. So
you're not even married yet.
No, I'm not even married yet, you know. So anyways, I just knew I was going to follow him wherever it led, you know. And of course, my hopes and my dreams were that it would have led to a marriage that endured the test of time,
right?
You know, but I think in some ways we both probably were fooling ourselves or not being honest with ourselves and with each other. And, you know, why were we getting married? Was it because there was this child on the way, or are we entering truly freely and of our own will? Right?
Yep.
And so this was that difference. So anyway, so when it came time that the divorce happened and she decided to leave, you know, in the end, I'd already worked through this major forgiveness obstacle that had taken place. And so I'm just like, okay, God, now just show me how I'm supposed to love in the midst of this situation.
Right.
You know? And so I worked on it, and just we really have a good relationship today, and
Good,
we've had a
good.
good relationship through that time, just knowing where we were both at in the situation. But in that process, here I am, a young dad with a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. And there's many years before I could, actually, if I were to go and become a priest, it would take years. So
Yes.
so in that time was the process of discovery.
Right.
And really it was the discovery that through some various dating of some great Christian girls, great Catholic girls, that in some ways I discovered that they were becoming in some ways an inconvenience to ministry, right? That's
Right.
terrible to say. Sorry out there. But in the end, what it helped me to discover was that that was where God was showing me I had a priestly heart.
Right.
That a heart that wasn't meant to love just that one person, but that God helped me to discover that he had a heart that wanted me to be able to embrace more, right? And that's, so when I discovered I had a priestly heart, I just quit dating. And so that was at about 34, 35.
Okay.
And I entered seminary I took the gamble that Bishop would accept me, right? So
This would have been Bishop Swain.
Yeah, because I still had to wait whether or not the kids were older, and then at that time say whether or not he was going to accept me. But I took the gamble, and God's providence. Bishop said yes, and
You're probably like the oldest guy in the seminary.
no, actually,
No?
I went out to Holy Apostles Seminary in Connecticut,
Okay.
so the nickname is Holy Fossils. Right? So at that time, I'd like to just state that I was in the middle of the road.
Okay,
I
so
was
this is like the old guy cemetery.
I was old guy cemetery, exactly.
Cemetery. That's not what I meant.
No,
Seminary.
that happens.
I said it, didn't I?
That happens more often than not, right? So, but in the end, so out there, I was even just the year before, there was a guy from Canada that was ordained at 72, right?
Wow.
But I studied with a lot of guys in their 60s who were widowers and then entered seminary. And then there were just guys who were guys that were living the generous single life and embraced
Took a while to get them there.
It took a while, right? So, and then there were a few in the same circumstances that they had gone through divorce, went through the annulment process, and are also priests serving elsewhere around different dioceses.
That's really cool. So we don't have a ton of time left. So let's make these good, right? What's been your favorite part of being a priest so far?
Definitely celebrating the Mass.
Yeah.
For me, I said when I celebrated the Mass, it was almost as though when I celebrated it the first time, I was praying fully human, I was praying with body, soul, my senses, everything. And it was like always so incorporated. It's like, oh, this is what it's like to really pray, right?
Pray the Mass,
Pray the Mass. And so in that, that's still been one of those consolations after these 4 years that my favorite part is still praying the Mass.
Yeah. Which other parishes have you been pastor at?
I was in Groton and Turton.
Okay.
And then the Newman Center in Aberdeen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I bet you enjoyed that time.
It was
with those
great.
Young folks.
Yeah. Nope. I enjoyed, I said my 2 years in Groton and Turton, they really were my retreat, my 2-year retreat until Bishop called me back into the deep waters of St. Michael's, right? So, but it's good. It's all an adventure.
Good.
So.
What's been the most challenging thing, do you think?
Right now, just challenging right now is just trying to wrap my head around this big parish of St. Michael's.
Yeah.
So in some ways, just trying to continue to be docile to the Holy Spirit and trusting in divine providence that where I lack, God will provide. Because if he called me there, I always remind him, you got to help me, right? So yeah.
Well, you must be doing okay. I've heard a lot of good comments from parishioners there who have really like you.
Okay.
So that's good, right?
Yeah, that is good. And it goes both ways. I like the people.
Yeah.
And we have a great associate, Father Scott Miller, right? Here from Sioux Falls. What a blessing to have him. And it also made me more comfortable going back, knowing the staff that I was walking into,
For sure.
So I had a lot of capable hands around me.
That's for sure.
It's a blessing.
What if you had a young man or even an older man who was divorced or whatever come to you and say, hey, I think I might be hearing the call of the priesthood. What should I do? What would you tell him?
Yeah. First thing I would recommend is going and let's go and have you hook up with the vocations director here in Sioux Falls to really talk to the vocation team here at the diocese. But I hope at the same time I could journey with them,
Right.
in that to say, well, let's talk about it. Let's go have a lunch or something, that we can explore this more. But to continue to, I always say we have to wake up being faithful to who we are today, right? So right now, just continue to be, if they were early high school, continue to live out faithfulness where you're at and trust that God will continue to help this to unfold. I always think in the book of Judges where Gideon was just gleaning wheat. Well, was he faithfully gleaning wheat each day and he's just doing what he's supposed to do? And then all of a sudden God calls him.
Yep.
So let's just continue to try to be faithful to who God called us to be today.
Right.
And trust that if he wants us to move someplace else, he'll move us if we give him permission.
Yeah, that's so true. You've experienced that in your own life.
Yeah.
Many times. So that's great advice. Our time is already up, and I knew that was going to happen with you because you have such a great story, and it's not a short one. So really thank you for coming in today, Father Hartman. I know you're super busy, and we're recording this on Ash Wednesday, and he was kind enough to come in on a very busy day for him. So
yeah, it's a blessing to be here and a blessing to be part of the diocese and a blessing to be part of St. Michael's.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. You can find us at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube anytime at SF Diocese, and of course at our website at sfcatholic.org. You can find all kinds of information about what's going on in the diocese, things you can be a part of. So come there anytime. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.